You've probably seen a photo of the ocean floor. Blue water, golden sand, a few fish drifting past a coral reef. That's not the ocean floor. That's the top 1% of it. The real answer is far stranger. 7 miles beneath the surface of the Western Pacific, there is a place with no light, no warmth, and pressure that would collapse your lungs in an instant. It's called the Mariana Trench, and you know almost nothing about it. Neither does anyone else. Here's the strange part. We have better maps of Mars than we have of our own ocean floor. NASA has photographed the surface of the moon down to the meter, but over 80% of Earth's seabed remains unmapped in any real detail. The deepest place on our own planet is, in a very real sense, more foreign to us than another world. Think about that for a second. You could point a telescope at a red dot in the night sky and know more about its terrain than about the terrain 7 miles beneath a boat. Why? Because getting there is nearly impossible. The trench wasn't dug or cracked open overnight. It's the result of two tectonic plates grinding against each other for millions of years, the Pacific plate slowly sliding beneath the Mariana plate, folding down into the mantle. That slow collision carved a scar in the seafloor nearly 7 miles deep and over 1,500 miles long, longer than the distance from New York to Los Angeles. Almost nobody has ever set eyes on more than a few scattered points along it. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, in a spot called the Challenger Deep, the pressure is over 16,000 pounds per square inch. To put that in a way your body can understand, imagine balancing 50 jumbo jets on top of you. All at once, that's the weight pressing down on every square inch of that seafloor, all day, every day for millions of years. A human body down there wouldn't sink slowly and drift like in the movies. It would be crushed in milliseconds, not dramatically, just silently, instantly. Most submarines built for ordinary ocean work would implode before they got even halfway down. So who has actually been there? In 1960, two men named Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh climbed into a steel vessel called the Trieste and descended into the Challenger Deep. It took them nearly 5 hours to sink that far. When they arrived, one of the window panes had cracked from the pressure. They stayed for 20 minutes. Then they came back up. For over 50 years after that, no human being returned. 50 years. Longer than we went without sending someone to the moon. Longer than we've had the internet. The deepest point on Earth sat quiet and unvisited while humanity built spacecraft and split atoms and mapped distant galaxies. Then, in 2012, a filmmaker named James Cameron piloted a submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger Solo to the bottom. He wasn't a professional oceanographer. He directed movies about sinking ships and blue aliens. Yet he was one of only a handful of people alive who had seen that world firsthand. A hydraulic leak forced him back up early. Even a filmmaker with a 9-figure budget couldn't stay long. The trench simply doesn't allow it. A few years later, in 2019, an explorer named Victor Vescovo went even further. As part of the 5 Deeps expedition, he descended into the Challenger Deep repeatedly, mapping sections of the floor in detail no one had achieved before. Sonar readings from one of those dives suggested a point slightly deeper than anywhere previously recorded. Even now, we're not entirely sure we've measured the deepest place on Earth with total precision. You'd think, after trips like that, we'd know everything about what's down there. We don't. Here's what's genuinely strange. Something is alive at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Not a little bit alive. Thriving. In a place with zero sunlight, near freezing temperatures, and crushing pressure, scientists have found shrimp-like amphipods swarming by the thousands. They've found strange gelatinous organisms called xenophyophores, single-celled creatures that grow to the size of your hand, which shouldn't be biologically possible by any normal rule of cell structure. They've found microbial mats that convert chemicals from the seafloor directly into energy, with no sunlight involved at all. Life, it turns out, doesn't need what you assume it needs. It doesn't need warmth. It doesn't need light. It just needs a crack in the dark, where something, anything, can be turned into fuel. There's even a fish down there, a pale, translucent creature called the Mariana snailfish, found at depths so extreme that biologists once assumed a fish's body couldn't survive it. Its skull isn't fully hardened, its bones thin and flexible instead of rigid, An adaptation that lets it withstand pressure that would shatter a denser skeleton. It survives purely by being soft enough and strange enough to belong somewhere nothing else can. A marine biologist named Alan Jameson has spent much of his career studying this. His team lowered baited traps into ocean trenches, including the Mariana, expecting a barren, lifeless void. Instead, they found amphipods in staggering numbers, scavenging on anything that fell from far above. The trench wasn't empty, it was hungry. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. In 2017, Jameson's team examined the tissue of those deep-sea amphipods. They found industrial pollutants, PCBs, the same toxic chemicals banned decades ago after they were linked to cancer and reproductive harm near the surface. Somehow, they had reached the most remote, untouched, unreachable place on the entire planet. Sit with that. You could travel to the one place on Earth sealed off from human civilization by 7 miles of darkness and crushing pressure, and still find a trace of something a factory made decades ago. There is nowhere left that's actually untouched. Not the deepest trench, not the coldest cave. We assume distance was protection. It was never protection. It was just a delay. So what does that mean for the rest of the ocean, the parts we haven't even bothered to look at yet? Nobody knows. That's the honest answer. We've explored more of the surface of Mars than we have of our own seafloor, and the seafloor is, quite literally, underneath us. It's not distant. It's not another planet away. It's a few miles down, and it remains one of the last true unknowns on this planet. Scientists estimate there could be entire species in the trenches never observed, never named, never counted in any record of life on Earth. Whole categories of life evolved in isolation, shaped by pressure and darkness into forms we haven't even imagined yet. Why does this matter to you? Sitting wherever you're sitting right now, with light in the room and air that doesn't crush your ribs. Because it says something about how you see the world. You assume the map is finished. You assume someone somewhere has already looked at everything worth looking at. That the unknown is small and shrinking, tucked away in some corner nobody cares about anymore. It isn't. The largest, strangest, most alien landscape on this entire planet has been sitting 7 miles beneath ships that cross it every single day. People have sailed over the Challenger Deep for centuries without knowing what was underneath them. Entire wars were fought on the surface of that ocean while, 7 miles down, creatures that don't need sunlight were quietly living out their lives in total silence. You are closer to genuine mystery than you think. Not somewhere far away. Not on another planet. Right here, underneath the water you've swum in a place almost nobody has ever seen. Maybe that's the real reason this place unsettles you. Not the pressure, not the dark. It's the reminder that certainty is mostly an illusion built on top of the parts of the world we happen to look at first. You grew up being shown maps and globes that looked complete. Diagrams of the ocean floor rendered in tidy blues and browns as if someone had actually checked. Almost none of it, below a certain depth, was ever confirmed by a human eye. It was inferred. Colored and based on sonar pings bounced off a surface nobody had touched. Isn't that true of more than the ocean? How much of what you consider settled, finished, fully understood is really just unexamined, colored in because someone needed to fill the space, not because someone actually looked? The most extreme, least visited place on Earth isn't hidden behind some distant frontier. It's a few miles beneath the ships that cross it daily, beneath fishing boats and cargo freighters full of people staring out at flat blue water, never once wondering what's underneath them. So the next time you look at a photo of the ocean and think you understand it, remember what it actually is. Blue water, golden sand, a few fish near the surface. That's not the ocean. That's the top 1% of it. The real answer is still down there, in the dark, waiting.